the fight against corruption, I think as a country, we failed abysmally in the last few years. And it's on the background of someone like the president who we believed will fight corruption for many reasons. We cannot cite him, at least in his previous political life, as somebody who was corrupt. He said it is not corrupt. We believed him. He said he was going to use the Nance principle. We believed him. And so many things would give us hope that this was going to be a presidency that will fight corruption. Indeed, when President Akufo declared a zero tolerance for corruption, some people laughed. But when this president said he was going to fight corruption, we actually did believe him. So maybe the expectations were quite high. And unfortunately, the performance has been abysmal. Of course, he is not the one to convict, but we all know that signaling when it comes to corruption is extremely important. And the signaling from this presidency and from this president has been very bad. Indeed, although he's not the one to go and convict people who are corrupt or whatever, he's also not the one to be clearing them and be making pronouncements about people who are under investigation. That really was terrible. And then even if he's not the one to convict, leadership requires you to make the right selections, and you will be judged based on the people you surround yourself with. This is the president who appointed the person to the procurement agency who was implicated in very serious corruption, all right? And it is not the first time. We know about the task force, you know. If you consistently are found to be appointing people who are found to be corrupt, and in very grievous ways right around you, it reflects on you. So it's unfortunate, but we have to say that the legacy of this president when it comes to fighting corruption will be terrible. And we need to say it as it is because we don't have to repeat these things. There's a lot going around. Today we have e-levy. And the basic thing about e-levy is
Kofi, hold on briefly for me. Was it the suggestion that the president ought to have known that ABAJ, the procurement boss, will be corrupt?
No. The president ought to have done due diligence, and he ought to have picked incorruptible or at best good people who were not likely to be corrupt. And what I'm saying is that after the fact, if we find out that you picked somebody who was corrupt, it reflects on you. And if that is not the only time, but we consistently find, we cited the task force and a couple of other times that you tend to pick people who end up in these corrupt schemes, there is a certain reflection on you. So I'm making that point, and that's a matter of fact. Now, after they have also been found culpable of corruption, we find, instead of you giving the signaling to work on making sure that it doesn't happen again, we find you clearing them. We find him making statements to the effect, you know, as if to say it doesn't matter. And so I'm saying that, look, if we look at his own history as a person, it really doesn't suggest he's a corrupt person. But if we look at his presidency, what has gone on, his appointments, his appointees, his statements whilst in office, and the things that have happened whilst in office, the Auditor General was run out of office. And today we have a situation where nobody is talking about the Parliament, the Public Accounts Committee. We have cases at the Auditor General, millions of dollars to be recovered. Nobody is talking about them. And we are going to use e-levy to raise new revenue. Okay, where is the waste and corruption discussion in our, financial matters? So look, let it be clearly said, and I'm saying so because we have to find a way not to repeat this.
Kofi, I still want to understand you. I still want to understand you on this point. So, ABAJ, when he was appointed, at the time of his appointment, his private bank account, according to the work by the Shraj and the OSP, Martin Amidu then, gave us the indication that his private bank account held only about 40,000 Ghana cedis. And at the time, Manasseh Azuriawene busted him. He had accounts that held in excess of 45 million Ghana cedis. That is within 3 years. And he used his office as a chief executive officer of the Public Procurement Authority to do these things. You are saying that the president ought to have known that he was likely to be a corrupt person and that he will sell contracts, he will set up companies on the side and do these deals?
Yes, he ought to have known. He ought to have known so let me explain how. He is the appointing authority. They work under his authority. Now, if the due diligence was done, then the man's proclivities or the man's potential to be corrupt may have been discovered. Let's assume that he was never corrupt until he got into office. During his tenure in office, over the 3-year period, when his bank account was going, this is what we have national security and whatever and all those things for, who are snooping on all kinds of people and tracking and chasing and cloning phones and doing all kinds of things. So he didn't see it. And if he didn't see it, that is a lapse in the system. Now, after Manasseh, with very few resources, and look, the work Manasseh did was not CIA level work. It was straightforward. He walked into places, asked simple questions, things that any diligent person who was minded to find these things out would have found out. And Manasseh busted him. And when he was found out, even now, we are not sure where things are concerning that particular investigation. The statements coming out of the office, did not signal that this was a situation that, really concerned the presidency much. Now, as we speak, I have read a paper concerning the recent appointments regarding procurement board, etc., where the law has been breached. So I'm saying I have read that the paper by a procurement expert where the law has clearly been breached. People who are not qualified to be there are there. And we are not hearing much about that as well. So I'm saying that the acts and utterances of this president do not bear out the trust we held in him as somebody who was, going to fight corruption. Unfortunately, that is the fact. And it's particularly disappointing because he came in with very, very high credentials. And we thought this was our hope, that somebody was going to really stand up and fight corruption. We should find a way to avoid this in future.
He has set up the OSP to go after the corrupt.
Well,
he has, as he says, funded the anti-graft organizations in a way that has never happened in the history of this country. That is his commitment. What do you say?
Samson, you and I know, because we've been fighting for years for RTI, we fought for OSP and all those things. That when it comes to fighting corruption, our leaders tend to make laws, set up institutions, and appoint people, and then leave it there. Charge, the potential of these institutions to do work, real work, is somehow lost immediately after the law is passed, the institution is formed, and the people are put in office. And so you find politicians running over themselves, and Mary was alluding to that, to appoint people and do all these things. And after that, we don't see any action. It's unfortunate that the OSP has not seen any real anti-corruption action. And all these institutions you're talking about, we had a ministry for procurement, all right? And what did they do? So we have a plethora of these institutions. And I agree with Mary. We need to collapse all of them. OSP, YOCO, all of them should be collapsed, and let's leave only one and empower them. And indeed, with or without the plethora of institutions, if you have a leader at the top who is signaling the right things, we will be effective in fighting corruption. On the other hand, we can multiply laws and institutions onto ourselves, the law against causing financial loss, and we have all kinds of things going on, as you are aware. If we don't get the leadership, it doesn't matter if we have 100 institutions against corruption, we will still be a corrupt people.